I'm thinking of the journey, right? And you get to this fork in the road where you say, should I go this way or should I go that way? What was the aha moment or a series of things that made you go through that crossroads of, determining whether you wanted to be a product leader versus a people leader?
Yes. Is that a confusing answer? That's because it's a confusing choice.
What would you say to yourself way back when you first got into management? Like, what would be some of that advice? Pre-sales. How does one know if they're a fit for that route or an IC route?
How did you know that you wanted to wear a red shirt today?
Is it rhetorical?
You have to pursue excellence no matter what role you're in.
The Tony Moze Podcast.
Hello, everybody. You have reached the Tony Moze Podcast, where in this segment, I interview tech professionals of all levels in marketing, sales, pre- and post-sales on their journeys, hoping to inspire you. Yes, you to make the transition from your previous career and into the tech world. This is an audio episode with many video sequences to come. And if you are interested in other aspects, you can also follow me on other outlets, including LinkedIn at in/Anthony-Palmose, Twitter at Tony_Moze, and YouTube at Tony Moze, where I provide you with a different angle from my experiences as a former psychology worker and military veteran turned tech professional. Today's guest is Steve Simmons. Steve has over 30 years of experience in sales, marketing, operations, strategy, and technology development. He joined Stefanini IT Solutions in 2020 as a senior manager for IT sourcing to lead pre-sales efforts for outsourcing deals around the world. In the immediate past assignment, 1.5-year consulting engagement, Steve was the sales and solution leader for CDW Managed Endpoint Anywhere, which is a device as a service. In 2018, Steve left Pomeroy IT Solutions, where it was acquired by Getronics after 8 years as managing director of pre-sales. Prior to Pomeroy, Steve worked for Siemens IT Solutions and served from 2005 to 2010 as Director of Strategic Engagements and led outsourcing sales pursuits throughout the world. He joined AT&T in 1986 and left at the end of 2004, being responsible for leading AT&T's organizational transformation efforts as Executive Director, AT&T Transformation. Prior to AT&T, Mr. Simmons was a congressional fellow for John Glenn and developed national industrial policies that linked research labs, governmental agencies, and manufacturing concerns. Mr. Simmons also worked for Cleveland Machine Controls, where he developed new products and negotiated partnerships. He is a graduate of Case Western Reserve University with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering and Applied Physics, and a Master's of Business Administration in General Management. He also completed the Advanced Management Program at Duke University and Executive Education at Columbia and with the American Management Association. Steve has been married to Nancy since 2018 and has 2 children, Marissa, an attorney in Los Angeles, California, and Steven, a software engineer for Paychex in Rochester, New York. So, Steve has been a wonderful mentor to me and hope he could be one to you. So without further ado, if you want the details, strap your belts and take a ride into pre-sales.
For coming on the show today. If we can, at least just start off by maybe just introducing yourself just for the audience to know who you are.
Sure. Steve Simmons. I have worked in technology for all of my career, not only IT, but I've worked in creating factories of the future. I've worked in terms of building new products and new services with international companies. I've worked also in the federal government as a congressional fellow. And then more recently, I've worked either consulting or working as in the IT realm. So I'm glad to get a chance to talk to Tony. We've talked before in the past. I give him all sorts of great and bad advice. And so I'm glad that he's at least talking to me again. So how you doing, Tony?
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Steve, thank you so much. So yeah, just to let people know too, like I was navigating these waters for the beginning stages of my like pre-sales career, and there was a lot of myths out there, a lot of myths that I still get from new people who are trying to come in and they're saying, oh, is this the truth? Is that the truth? And you were able to demystify a lot of that, and that actually gave me more, not just the word strength, but just the impetus to keep going, because if I was just gonna give up, and the problem is, of course, just as they say, like that whole meme, I don't know if there was like a graphic post or whatever, where it's like success is not linear. You're gonna have these jagged bumps, and the graph is just gonna always look like a up and down type thing, and that's just part of the journey. So question that I ask everybody who comes on the show, what was that moment or series of things that made you say, let's get into pre-sales?
So I think my first role in pre-sales was around just before 2000. And how I chose to go into that role is I was working for AT&T, and there was an AT&T unit that was non-traditional. It was an outsourcing unit. And I was given an opportunity to lead a portion of the country to pursue outsourcing. And the sales team that we had in our focus was mostly an overlay sales force for AT&T. And I thought it was a rare opportunity, because I had been working for AT&T for more than a decade at that point, to do something that was on the leading edge in terms of building a business within AT&T. So that was something different. And I pursued the choice of making different career paths on a regular basis. And within the four corners of working for a large corporation, it was easy to do that. And so that was my first exposure. It began with leading a small team with a small area, and it ended with leading the middle third of the country with respect to AT&T and outsourcing for the business that was at hand, called AT&T Solutions. And that was both the sales and pre-sales role. So had a good experience doing that, and that's what started me off.
I mean, people who are listening to, they don't have to necessarily see just this one area of tech. Of course, like I had also the luxury, if you could say, of not just being in pre-sales. I've also done, was a business development rep, also being able to work cross-functionally too with sales and pre-sales in the midst of me getting into a pre-sales, like an actual, like exclusive pre-sales position. But this is really cool to hear, because your story, wasn't just pre-sales, right? It was right. There was other things, as well as another thing too I want to talk about later on is the fact that you not only were an individual contributor, you were also a manager, and then also you have been a manager and also an individual contributor. So it's like you're giving different sides, different areas for people to consider when they're trying to make their way into tech.
Right. Absolutely. And if we talk about and isolate it to the pre-sales role specifically, you're never really an individual contributor. You're either a matrix manager or you're a direct manager, but you're always a manager. You always have to lead a team at constructing a solution based on the direction you're providing. And based on the organization that you're in, you may have to lead teams with other tasks. You might have to lead teams to initiate the transition effort and be involved at the beginning or throughout. You may have to lead teams in creating the contract, write the contract, negotiate the contract, and manage those teams associated with that. And necessarily, you have to lead the solution development. And that's a key and core aspect of that role. And in doing so, you have to engage resources, typically the ones that are going to ultimately deliver the solution, to weigh in and participate in the solution and the confirmation that your design works. So, it is a profession, a role where, by all means, you have to have some leadership responsibility, and you have to exercise it to be able to be successful.
So I had just heard something new. Also, just a light bulb went in my head. But I've heard of already of first line managers. I've heard of middle management, of course. Then there's executive level. But what is this idea again? If you could clarify, what is matrix management? That's a new one now.
So matrix management means that you're not organizationally structured in such a way that these people report to you and you do their performance appraisals and you hire and fire them. But what it means that in the context of running a team, you're the leader of the team and you are guiding them with respect to the direction that you might have. And necessarily as a member of the team, you're also taking input from everybody on the team to perform what the direction might be. So matrix just means that it's transactional. It's not permanent. And it may vary. You might have some team members in one opportunity, and you might have different team members in another opportunity, but you are retaining that role of being that team leader.
And then the opposite of that would be, because it sounds like the matrix is the head, is like the...
Well, the matrix is just saying that it's transactional. The opposite of that is these people actually directly report to you. So if you have a boss and you know who that boss is and they're telling you what your pay is going to be, and you're asking them for vacation days, and you are in fact ensuring that you're meeting their expectations, that is a direct relationship with a manager. And so that's kind of the traditional one that you would experience, is you have someone who's your direct manager. But in cases like matrix management, you have someone who's actually designated as the team leader for some set of work, and that person is guiding a set of people to perform that task.
Cool. So I'm thinking of the journey, right? And you get to this fork in the road where you say, should I go this way or should I go that way? What was the aha moment or a series of things that made you go through that crossroads of, determining whether you wanted to be a product leader versus a people leader?
Yes. Is that a confusing answer? That's because it's a confusing choice. It's a confusing choice because you actually, you can either choose to go what seems to be attractive to you at the time, or you can have a plan that says, here's the kinds of skills and experiences I'd like to acquire over time. And here's an opportunity for getting that next skill or experience. So the answer is yes, because you may choose to go product focused because an opportunity presents itself, or process or people focused because an opportunity presents itself. And for me, that is kind of the direction I took. Is I initially had people reporting to me. The next job I had with a different company, I had matrix management responsibility. I didn't have people reporting to me. The next job I had direct management responsibility with a lot more people reporting to me, with a lot bigger dollar value, hundreds of millions of dollars, over the course of, the years I was there. And then the next job I said, wow, that was a pain in the butt. Let me just do a matrix management job. And then the next job. So you see how you can progress with respect to the choices you make. It's what you find that works in terms of a work-life balance, if there is one, and it's what you find in terms of a career focus and what your direction might be.
Wow. I've heard from certain companies, sometimes the management role is a little bit more consistent, meaning like, say if someone has a family, they have children and everything like that. Some of them would say, you know what, I'm done with the IC role. I want to be in management because there's just more consistency there. I know like everything's set and I have a schedule or a plan, something like that. I mean, what have been your experiences with that whole idea?
It's false. You have to pursue excellence in no matter what role you're in, and that pursuit of excellence drives you to choose how much of your time you have to spend, and necessarily it doesn't get limited by manager or individual contributor. it might get limited by the field that you're in or the role that you're taking. And you have to guide yourself in terms of how you manage your work-life balance and your career focus versus your family focus. There really shouldn't be a versus. It should be family focus for me, and then everything else fits within that. So as you think about those choices, you can say, wow, I was in direct sales, and I've been in direct sales, and I had to work 24/7, because you have to go after the client. Whatever the client says makes sense. It's a focus. And then you can say, well, as a manager, it's a lot easier. Well, now I have 15 people that are direct sales folks, and they want me to show up on 15 different needs that they have with 20 different customers apiece to show up here, there, and wherever else. And then I have to do the performance appraisals, and I have to create strategies, and I have to find out what the new products are. In fact, oftentimes the management role can absorb much more time because of the statistics of working with the people that you have and the responsibilities that you have. And as you get more senior, more focus, more percentage, and more priority of your time might need to be spent just because of how important the things are you're doing from a decision-making perspective.
How does one know if they're a fit for management? We could look at it in general, but like, how about first off, pre-sales? How does one know if they're a fit for that route or an IC route?
So how did you know that you wanted to wear a red shirt today?
Is it rhetorical?
Yeah. You just said, hey, look, I'm going to try it out, see how it works with the camera. If it works, I'm going to keep using it. If it doesn't, I'm going to blame Steve. He should have told me I should have wore a red shirt, right? So that's how you figure it out. You don't necessarily know everything at the time. Some things are iterative, some things are exploratory. You test it out, see if it works, you move from there. I would advise, folks that to kind of do a self-inventory of what their likes are and dislikes are, what they find themselves interested in doing. And that might guide them well to their passion, right? What are you passionate about? And then therefore, how would you, support that passion?
You have me now wanting to switch around a little bit because you said something that some newly made managers have spoken about their experiences with onboarding, ramping, and an overall enablement into being management of pre-sales teams. So should companies make their newbie managers wing it, like where they learn on the fly by trial and error, or should there be a formalized training on it where they get access to individuals who specifically train managers, providing reading material, one-on-one coaching and support, or should it encompass all?
Well, the should statement I try to avoid because I don't know the company's perspective on how they operate. I can tell you what I have done and what I suggest to do when I'm doing something. So when my approach is that I typically try to train, and actually I create training materials for the people that will have roles, significant roles in my team. In many cases, they're experienced and have done it many times in many different places. So the training is just cultural, is how are we different than what you might have experienced before? So you have to, take people from where they are and find out where you would like them to go. And ultimately, it's your job to grow your folks. And if that growing those folks means you're growing them in such a way that they're actually moving out of your organization because now there's another capability that they can use of their own, that's great. But I think the real answer is you have to, as for me and what I do, I see my role as a manager to advance, the skill set and the career plans of the folks, because happier people doing their passion produce better results.
Just thinking about though, if someone's, if we were to like rank, I'm just thinking of this, ranking it. Would you be fine with giving this new manager like just documents and saying, hey, go have at it? Or like, would it be more of like, I want to give that person that one-to-one support, then maybe give them the documents and then something else? Like, I don't know. Could you give, like, how would you do it? Like, say if it was your organization, what would your hierarchy of priority would be for training that new manager?
I never leave anyone out on the on the deck by themselves. So the first part of it is more of a hand-holding activity where I'm there to answer questions, to accompany them through their initial forays at doing stuff, so that they can just bounce it off of me. I'm not going to jump in unless they ask a question, but I can give them feedback at the end that says, here's how things worked well, and here's how things could work better from my perspective, but you have a different way of doing it. But the outcome has to improve in this way. And so I think that there is always a benefit to spending time with your manager, and that manager observing more closely what you're doing when you start. Documents are just that. They're kind of sterile. You can look at them, you can read them, you can say, there's not a lot of precision that has to happen that can be captured in documents. You might be able to read that, yes, you need to turn the key to unlock the door, but the question about when you should unlock the door is a different one. So you have to understand the nuances, and a lot of the nuances can't be translated into reading material. So it has to be observational. It has to be a participative activity from how I would do it. And I think that that's a useful way to help people get to the point where they can perform well.
I like what you said right there about the whole idea of, giving a piece of paperwork. There's nuances and things, right? And it's kind of hard. What one person sees in this paperwork could be different, interpreted differently from somebody else.
Right.
And especially when I started my pre-sales career, I wanted that, I didn't want the document thrown at me. I wanted to be able to bounce ideas off, especially with those who have been in the position in the company for some time, to really clarify, demystify it, all these different things. And I think that is definitely a good thing to do. So yeah.
Well, you don't have to only rely on your manager. I've been very fortunate, and in particular, the company I'm in and companies before that, with colleagues that would reach out and assist me in learning the ropes of how the organization works. Peers that would tell me, yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And you're right, it's stupid. Here's how we do it. And so by getting that information that from folks that you're working with and you're working around, it really helps you, integrate into that environment better and be able to use your skills effectively at it producing. So, it isn't necessarily only the manager you should rely on. You have to take your own step of reaching out to folks and seeing if they'll be able to and willing to assist you at learning. And learning is a constant activity. You never know everything you need to know.
And so have you seen in your experiences people making it into pre-sales management with little to no pre-sales background? Meaning, like, in other words, is having a background in pre-sales a prerequisite to management, or is it just knowledge of the product and company offering the prerequisite?
Well, let's talk about, I think we need to have a common definition of what pre-sales is. Okay. And so I'll share with you what I see it as, and it may be the same or similar to what you have. And then we can talk about, who has been successful at moving in that role from my perspective. So pre-sales, there's a lot of old terminology for it. Sales engineer, you can talk about technical or system administrator, all sorts of different terminology that is effectively the partner to the salesperson, the relationship manager. And that technical or system individual carries the skill to build and propose and promote the detailed solution that the client might be looking at. So that individual is saying, okay, I've heard what the client said. I got these a set of assumptions, and here is, at the end of the day, what I could propose to meet their business needs. Technically, price, timeframes, complexity, potentially the contract language. All of those things go into that role in various organizations. Okay. So when I use the word pre-sales, that's kind of the individual that's doing it. They're also often called solution architects, solution directors. I've heard them called engagement directors, because that's kind of a broader term that says and the reason that they're managers is because, as I said, it's a matrix management responsibility, and it's pretty senior because you have to drive people that don't report to you. Now, who comes to that role equipped to be able to handle it? Well, if you have been delivering those services that you're trying to design, you have a good place to start. You have a good place to start in terms of designing it, but do you have the skills to have that customer interface that's necessary to communicate with the client, get the information necessary, sell them on the solution? So that says that delivery person has the knowledge in terms of how things work, but they also have to come equipped with the ability to sell. So there's one avenue. Another avenue is a salesperson. The salesperson may need to talk, be able to be really effective at convincing clients to consider a response from their organization. But in the case of being a pre-sales person, they actually have to design the solution. They can't drop it off at somebody else's door, say, figure it out and give us a proposal. They actually have to do all that work. So they have to have the knowledge or the interest or the ability to extract the necessary information from the client, understand how to design whatever it is, the solution, or engage the right resources to assist in the design, and then to prepare it in such a way that it's compelling. So that means that salesperson has to become equipped with the technical skills. Now, you could also say that someone who's very good at project management might have some skills to bring to bear, because all of this requires project management. You have to gather the inputs, you have to interact with the client, you have to schedule, pulling together the team, you have to do all of those things. But that's more the administrative portion. It doesn't have the substance of interacting with the client or creating the technology. So that individual would need to bring to bear or have natively or develop natively those skills to be able to do that. So as you can see, I think I weigh towards delivery and salespeople that had to have extended skills to get there. You can have someone who's purely technical that knows how to do technology out of the wazoo, can probably figure it out, figure out how to design the solution. But do they have the sales skills? Do they say, I'm going to build what I think you need and you're going to like it, Mr. Customer? That probably doesn't work too well, but a lot of engineers would say that. So you can see that there are a lot of people that could participate and be effective in pre-sales. But from my perspective and experience, they have to have a set of skills, a broader set of skills. What that usually means is pre-sales is not for the faint of heart. Pre-sales is probably not an entry-level position unless it's a very simple solution, because you have to have all these other skills that operate effectively at the same time. Pre-sales can be grown. You can be kind of assistance pre-sales person or focused on one aspect of it and then grow over time as you get more effective. Or you can just be a unicorn. You can come equipped to know everything when you're 2 years old and drop into the role. I've seen it more or less that pre-sales folks have had some degree of life experience, possibly in a number of those different areas, and they've been able to then therefore consolidate that.
Just to summarize from what I heard you say was it's less on the person having the title, right? And it's more on them having the ability to do said role. So it's less of them having this title that they signed up for called customer success manager. It's more about that they can deliver. They can actually have the abilities, the capacity to be able to deliver in a pre-sales manner. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. But as it's all about, is it observable? Can people look from either their conversation with you in the interview or dialogue and your background or conversations they have with people that work with you that suggest that you have these traits that can in fact be leveraged to become a pre-sales person. So it never ever stop because somebody else says you can't do it or you don't have them. That doesn't mean anything. It just says, your opportunity set, your ability to convince somebody has got a little bit more work to do. Okay. So I think the key attribute is to first have the passion to want to do that, know why you want to do that, and then and do an inventory. Here's what I know, here's what I don't know, and how am I going to get there?
And what can a lower member who is considering being a people manager, a manager of pre-sales members, need to be doing or focusing on in preparation of getting into that role?
By that, do you mean someone who hasn't done pre-sales before?
Someone who has not been in management.
Well,
So
again, yeah, you don't necessarily have to be in management to have become a pre-sales person. It helps from the perspective I offered that this matrix management responsibility, you have to actually direct people to do work. Okay. And if you have to direct people to do work, that in and of itself is management or team leadership. So how do you get prepared for that? Well, when you jump in the pool and it's cold and you're shivering, you realize you want to do something to get out of that. So you figure out how you're going to get out of that. So one of the ways is you educate yourself. You see how you can learn information that might be academic in nature. You might see how you can learn information that's on the job, or talk to people about the role and what's important, and describe it from the perspective of, here's what I know, here's what you know. Let's talk about the differences, okay? And are the differences meaningful to you, the person who's developing your capability, or the differences not, okay? I think to be able to test yourself about where you are and where you want to go is kind of a key attribute to know, where do you want to get there? How do you want to get there from here?
And when you said ice, jumping in the pool, and it say it's an ice cold pool, that sounds to me like also doing things that are not necessarily saying, hey, like this is a managerial type of activity, but like it's still nevertheless putting you in that kind of situation in preparation for it, like jumping on opportunities and activities and volunteering for things, or always raising your hands to say, hey, let me do this. I mean, I guess that's what it's.
Yeah. So if you think about the steps you take in jumping, the steps I take in jumping in the pool, you might say, there's every opportunity that damn pool's cold. Okay. So I'm going to shiver. And what am I going to do when it's cold? I might move a little bit faster. I might not stay as long. And it's probably a good idea if I'm going to jump in the pool that I have something on. Probably swimming trunks are better than having a suit and a jacket. So I'm going to make sure I have swimming trunks when I jump in the pool. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure if I'm jumping in the pool, I'm not jumping in the neighbor's pool that has a pit bull. I'm going to jump in a pool that's kind of okay, safe, and it's clean in the water. So there's a lot of preparatory stages you do, even when you don't know what the outcome is when you get there. And you ready yourself for that outcome when you get there. It's like, okay, here's what happens when I get in there. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to swim. I'm going to have to decide if it's too cold. I'm going to have to find out how long I can be here. All of these things are things that you're thinking through as you're making that decision, either before or while you're there.
You're looking at yourself today. What would you say to yourself way back when you first got into management? Like, what would be some of that advice?
I guess the first one is, looking back on time, I'd say, don't eat so much. Look what you turned out to be. You had to, you ate a little bit too much all during your life. Yeah, now you have to try to lose all that weight. So, that would be the first thing I would tell myself. The second thing I would tell myself is, don't sweat it. Opportunities present themselves. Be very vigilant and aware. And it's by your excellence that those opportunities pop up, and God's wish. Okay. So take a look, take a deep breath, take a step back, observe what's going on around you, have a plan, realize you plan, God laughs. And then move forward with that. Try to move in that direction. Your plan may not be perfect. It may not even be a good plan, but having a plan gives you some guidance in terms of where your boundaries are and what was important to you and how you can move forward. Okay, you can then make a change from that plan in a systemic way. Oh, okay, I don't like this thing that I thought I was planning to do. I like this other stuff that I was doing before or want to do. And now I can move in that direction. I don't think that, I think that I thought the world was a little bit more structured than it is when I was younger. I thought that, there was certain specific steps to become successful that that there weren't. I thought that the control that I would have over the outcomes was more in my hands. I realized, how foolish that was, that I had lots of great mentors that actually directed me in ways that I didn't anticipate to actually move, and essentially protected me from doing something stupid. And so through that, I got a lot of rare and unique opportunities that I never would have gotten, and I developed. Okay, and I developed in such a way that I integrated my life with my work in a way that suited me. I could have done more work and gotten to more money, or I could have done more life and gotten to more time with seeing the kids. There are things in the life, and so there are things like that are important to consider, that you make your decisions on the best you can when you can.
You talked about protectors, people helping you, protect you from doing stupid things. Had me ask, who or what have been your inspirations in being successful in the role, whether it's at work or outside of work?
Oh, wow, gee. And never think it's someone who's, from a management perspective, at a more senior level than you that can be the most influential. I can remember, early in my sales career, I had a person who worked for me who was just absolutely effective at articulating and communicating with clients, articulating the value of communicating with clients. And I was dazzled by how he could communicate and effectively manage things with clients. And so I adopted, I just said, let me steal that technique and use that. And then there was a lady who I think was a boss of mine or a peer of mine that was absolutely fantastic at working multiple things at the same time extremely well and successfully. Never could completely adopt that, but at least I could observe it and say, well, what do I need to change in my behavior to be able to do that? And then there was kids I could watch and they'd say they got a lot of energy. How do they get the energy? Because they really enjoy doing what they're doing. They enjoy it so much that they wouldn't stop doing it. And I found myself, I think, really early in my career, doing inventing things, making automation, and I'd work until 4 o'clock in the morning because making something move and work and work automatically was cool. It happened to be work for GE at the time, but it was cool for me. It was fun. So I learned the value of passion in driving your behavior and choosing how you move forward. So the mentors, and I did have a lot of very, very senior level mentors, people that were at the top, one of the top 3 people within AT&T was a mentor of mine. And, top people, I would count that I worked for Senator John Glenn, and he would give me guidance occasionally for the time I was a congressional fellow. So I had very effective mentors, and many of my bosses in some way or another are a mentor, and many of them, are fundamental to the way I function and operate. I'll pick pieces out of how they function and operate and try to replicate or find how it works for me.
And then how about any books or YouTubes or blogs, that you consume that you would recommend to all levels?
Well, I'm considered to be overeducated. I got, multiple advanced degrees. So people tend to say, you don't need to read any more damn books. Okay. You need to start to talk about stuff. But yeah, what I found is a focus of constant learning. And, most recently, I try to learn disciplines and areas that I may not have a skill in. And these are obviously going to sound wild. Okay. Some of them make sense and some of them don't. So for instance, I recently started to learn, get certified in AWS cloud. That's not the area that I need to be pre-sales focused in. That's not the digital workplace services principally, plus hardware as a service, device as a service, plus a variety of other things. But that's not my specialty. But I wanted to know enough of that to be dangerous. So I got certified in that. I also I'm working through the certification of IDLE version 4, because understanding the context of using language and terminology to describe stuff is useful. It's sloppy. People generally, when you're talking to clients and generally when you're talking internally, no one's talking in IDLE 4, just like no one's talking in Old English. But understanding the structure and the terminology is helpful. And here's the one that's going to sound strange. So I started taking salsa lessons. We've been taking salsa lessons for the last 32 weeks or so, some ungodly a period of time. And I wish I could say I had 2 left feet. I don't even know if I could qualify as I have 1 left foot. It's probably more like hopping around. But what it did do, because of that, is it pulled me out of my comfort zone to try to learn stuff. So Nancy's been dancing for 20 plus years. I've been attempting to do some structured dancing for the last 32 weeks, and it was way out of my comfort zone. And so challenging yourselves in such a way that you have to stretch and grow and learning from experiences are just beneficial. I may pick up a book if I find a book. I'm reading lots of books. I'm just not reading books about pre-sales. Okay. It's that's how it's working.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you again for everything you've said today.